In the previous video we looked about the global layout of your poster and what needs to go into the different elements. In the previous video we looked at the global layout of the poster and where you would arrange your different elements to make the poster make sense. So what we'll do in this one is focus a little bit more on maybe adding some elements to your poster. So one of those that we're going to add are graphics and images, and they're very, very important for a poster. So roughly 40 to 50% should be graphical, whether that's a flowchart, whether it's a graph or some other image. But you want the poster to be very graphical. So it's not an absolute rule, but generally we look at that just under half is the best rule of thumb. So I have some pictures from previous research papers that I'm going to use, and you can see this picture is almost the size of a full PowerPoint slide, so that's an A4 page, and I'm going to copy that into my large poster format, and you can see immediately it's quite small, and that gives you an impression of the scale that you're dealing with now. So even these very, very large images will appear very small in the overall landscape of the poster. So I'm going to zoom into this one specifically, and to do that easily I click on the object, hold down the control key, and I scroll the mouse wheel, and PowerPoint is clever enough that it will zoom into the selected item. So here we go, we have what I'm interested in. You'll note from the zoom button that we're at 100%, which means this is more or less what it will look like size-wise when we print it out. So I need to do something very important for this. I need to put in a figure legend. So I'm going to use the text box. I'll insert a text box and I'll drag the text box so it'll be roughly where I want it to be, and now I can type in my text. So this is going to be figure 1, and so I'm giving it a descriptive title as the first part. Okay, so figure 1, developmental changes in that metabolite levels. I'm bolding that, and in the second part I can explain. So I can have 1 or 2 lines which explain what's happening. So in this case I might say it increases rapidly after birth and then plateaus 2 to 3 weeks after birth. Okay, so I think it would be very easy to be able to put that in, and it's very useful to put that in for a figure. You'll remember from way back when we did the figure and table preparation checklist that it should be very, very clear and self-sufficient in the figure. Okay, so that's an example of one figure that you could use, and you can put as many figures in as you like, but they all have to make sense and they have to be there for a reason, and importantly they have to not suffer from what's called the pixelation problem. And what I mean by pixelation problem is when you have jagged edges on parts of your figure. So if I zoom in on this one I can show you a little bit what I'm talking about. So you can start to see on the edge of the circle in the middle that it looks a little bit jagged. Now that doesn't look like it's a big deal, but when you have something printed out very large it can be an issue. So you need to bear that in mind to make sure that you use images of sufficient quality that you can actually work with them. In some cases we may not want to focus completely on the whole part of the image. So I'm clipping in this image just as an example of one where I only want to focus on the right hand side of the image. You don't have to worry about what it is, but what I want to do is right click it, select it, right click it, and then click crop. And you notice you get these thick black lines, and what they mean is I can essentially cut away part of the image to focus on the piece that I'm interested in. So let's say I got to crop it here, and now magically the rest of the image has disappeared. Now it hasn't actually disappeared, PowerPoint is still holding it in the background, but now we have a smaller image that we can play with. This one is actually quite a good example of that pixelation issue. So you can see the text is quite pixelated and hard to read. So just be aware of that as you're working on your images. And again, we're going to take the shortcut and duplicate a previous element so that we can have another figure. So this is going to be figure 2. And it's a similarity plot. So what we've seen now is adding the legend and also cropping the image. So that's 2 very simple elements. Now, you notice that when I tried to click on something, I accidentally moved the background image, and that can happen. One of the ways to deal with that is to prepare your images in a separate PowerPoint file and copy them from that into your final. So here's a blank PowerPoint file that we can use to create something. And what we're going to do is we're going to create some smart art. So smart art is a built-in function within PowerPoint that enables you to very quickly do interesting graphical elements. So for example, let's do a process. Let's say we have a 3-stage process as part of our methods. I can click on Insert Smart Art. So remember, it was Insert, Smart Art, and then I picked which one I wanted to insert. So I picked Process. And I'll get something like this. Doesn't look like very much at the moment, but what I can do is I can now start adding text. So I can say step 1. So I shift and enter to get a new line. Open bottles. Then I can go to step 2. Analyze DNA, and step 3. Oh, I pressed return without pressing shift. So now I have an extra step. So how do I get rid of that? Well, I have 2 options. I can go backwards and delete it, or I can be in that step and I can tab in one. When I tab in one, I get a sub-step. And you'll notice it has the little bullet point as well. So you can see how the format of these looks slightly different. But the great part is you can very, very rapidly reorganize how you actually work with a smart art, how it looks, and how it's designed. So again, this little arrow at the side will open or close spaces for your text. And if I go to design, I can pick the type of smart art I want, and you can see it dynamically and very quickly reorganizes it for me. So I don't have to do any extra work. I've put my text in, it's doing the work for me. Obviously some of these are better than others, some of them are novelty value really only. So stay away from the novelty value, stick with the ones that do what you need it to do. So let's stick with something very simple. Let's go with this one. Now, maybe I don't like blue. Maybe I want to have different colors. Now these colors will be tied into the color choices you've made for the PowerPoint slide. So that doesn't limit you, it means you can change them. So I can select the shapes. I can change the fill color. So maybe I want to have them as gold. I can change it to gold. So I have a lot of freedom in this. I can increase the font size of everything in one go. It sometimes has strange effects on your overall smart art and you need to do a bit of tweaking, but it's very fast. That's the key part. Now, once you've established that you've got your flow going in the way you want it to, so again, we're going into design. We pick the smart art we like, and then we can change the colors. We can change the shading. So we have our smart art. We select the smart art element, and then we're going to copy it, and we're going to paste it into our overall poster. So I can paste my smart art directly into PowerPoint, and if I need to, I can add in some extra steps into it. And I can edit and modify it directly in situ within PowerPoint. So I have all of that function, but I'm not getting as confused by having to select multiple layers of objects lying one on top of the other. For adding in text, you can just type the text in as we've seen here, or you can use the text box. Both of those will work absolutely fine and will give you the options to change things as you need to. So to recap, we can add in images that we have generated elsewhere very, very easily into PowerPoint. We can add in images and then we can crop them. Now, you can't crop something like this PowerPoint one that I've added in because it's not a picture, it's a diagram, but I could convert it into a picture if I liked. But you're better off editing it elsewhere and finishing it and then transferring it into your poster. We can add in smart art. It's very versatile and we can change it very, very quickly to suit our needs. So smart art can be very, very powerful, particularly for your methods, particularly because you can use a flow chart. It focuses on what you want to have and eliminates the need to have lots of words describing something. In this particular smart art version, you can actually add in a picture into each one of those steps. So if you have a picture somewhere else, so let me go and grab a picture from one of those. So I can grab a picture and I can paste it into my smart art. So you can see now I've added in a picture into that smart art element. So that creates a very nice dynamic for you, particularly in your methods where you can add in pictures at the same time as adding in text to explain those pictures. So remember, keep the contrast good, make sure that it's legible, use a sans serif font, and as a parting message in relation to the authors, it's really important to make sure that you include all of the authors and their affiliations, i.e. where they have come from. You also need to include your disclaimer in relation to your data sources for the project and in relation to where you took the data from and the fact that you did not generate the data yourself, you've only analyzed the data, and that needs to be included in your poster. Okay? Now, you will want to have a logo included for TU Dublin. Don't just go to the TU Dublin webpage and copy it because you'll run into pixelation problems. So I'm going to show you what that looks like now. I have copied it and it's supposed to be pasting it in for me now. So here we have a tiny, tiny logo. It's too small and it hasn't pasted well. What you need to do instead is do a simple Google search for TU Dublin logo, and what you'll actually find is a web page which is specifically related to logos, and you can download a decent quality logo. Okay? That can be copied and inserted, and you'll see this is very big, and that's because it's been prepared specifically for use in digital documents. And see how big it is. The great part about that is if we make that smaller and we put it in as part of our banner headline, it's going to have perfect resolution when we print it out. Now remember, you can't change a logo in any way. Okay, it is as it comes because it's a logo, it's a corporate identity. So just bear that in mind. So don't take the logo off the web page, it's not the right one. Find the logo specifically on the dit.ie, but TU Dublin logos page. Google search it, you'll find it as easy as I did, and that's the one you want to put in. Okay?